The cold cargo station floated silently near the edge of dead space. Broken ships drifted outside like dark ghosts, and weak red lights blinked across the rusty metal walls. Smugglers, hunters, and desperate travelers filled the crowded market halls every day. Nobody came to this place for peace. They came because they had nowhere else to go. Marcus slowly walked through the station carrying a heavy metal toolbox in one hand. His old brown coat was covered with dust and oil stains, and tiredness could clearly be seen on his face after years of surviving alone in space. Marcus only wanted to sell a few machine parts and buy enough fuel for his damaged cargo ship. He avoided eye contact with everyone because trouble always followed people who talked too much in places like this. Loud alien voices echoed across the market while guards pushed prisoners through the crowded hallways. Some cages carried dangerous criminals. Others carried people nobody cared about anymore. Marcus ignored all of it and kept walking toward the trading area. Then suddenly a weak little voice stopped him in the middle of the hallway. "Please, don't leave me here." Marcus slowly turned around. Behind glowing energy bars sat a small alien girl with silver skin and bright blue eyes. Thin chains were wrapped around her wrists, and dirt covered her face and clothes. She looked weak, hungry, and exhausted. Several rich buyers walked past her cage without even stopping. To them, she was just another item waiting to be sold. But the alien girl looked directly into Marcus's eyes like she was searching for one final hope before giving up completely. The little girl stepped closer to the bars and quietly asked, "Will you sell me like Papa did?" Her voice sounded calm, but the pain inside those words hit Marcus harder than any weapon ever had. The noisy market suddenly felt silent around him. Marcus could not answer immediately because shock tightened his chest. The girl did not even cry while asking the question. That was the worst part. It sounded like betrayal had become normal for her. Marcus slowly looked toward the fat alien merchant sitting beside the cage and asked where the girl came from. The merchant laughed loudly while drinking from a glowing bottle. He explained that the girl belonged to an ancient alien bloodline worth millions of credits. Scientists wanted to study her. Collectors wanted to own her. Criminal groups wanted to auction her across the galaxy. The merchant proudly said the girl's own father sold her for fuel money after losing everything during the war. Some nearby traders laughed hearing the story, but Marcus felt anger slowly building inside him. The alien girl lowered her head quietly like she had already accepted her terrible fate. Marcus tried to walk away because helping her would only bring danger into his life. He had spent years avoiding problems and surviving alone after the old war destroyed everything he cared about. But after taking only a few steps, he heard the girl speak again behind him. "If I stay quiet, will the next owner hurt me less?" Marcus stopped walking instantly. Pain filled his eyes as memories from his own dark past returned. Slowly, he turned back toward the cage while the little alien girl watched him carefully with hopeless eyes. Without speaking another word, Marcus walked toward the merchant and asked for the price. The merchant smiled greedily and demanded almost all the credits Marcus had left. People nearby laughed at Marcus for wasting money on what they called a broken alien child. Marcus ignored them completely. He handed over the credits with shaking hands while the merchant deactivated the energy cage. The chains around the girl's wrists unlocked with a metallic click. The little alien girl stepped out slowly, but kept her distance from Marcus like she expected him to become cruel at any moment. Marcus quietly told her to follow him to the ship docks. The girl obeyed silently while keeping her eyes lowered the entire time. As they walked through the crowded station, several dangerous-looking strangers secretly watched them from the shadows. One of them activated a small tracking device and whispered into a communicator. Marcus did not notice. His attention stayed focused on the frightened child walking beside him. The girl looked nervous every time another person walked too close. Even loud sounds made her body shake with fear. After reaching the docking area, Marcus opened the doors to his old cargo ship. The ship looked worn and damaged from years of hard travel. Loose wires hung from the ceiling, and the engine made terrible sounds while starting up. The little alien girl stopped near the entrance and looked confused. She carefully asked where the cages were. Marcus stared at her for a moment before quietly answering, "There are no cages here." The girl looked shocked, like she did not understand what those words meant. Inside the ship, Marcus gave her warm food and a clean blanket. The girl grabbed the food quickly but hid part of it inside her pocket instead of eating everything. Marcus noticed but said nothing. After years of surviving alone, he understood what fear looked like. The girl probably believed the food would disappear tomorrow. Marcus then showed her a small empty room near the back of the ship. It was simple and cold, but it was safe. The little alien girl slowly sat on the bed while looking around nervously. Before leaving the room, Marcus finally asked for her name. The little girl stayed silent for several seconds before quietly answering, "Lyra." Marcus nodded slowly and closed the door halfway to make her feel less trapped. But later that night, while repairing the ship engine, Marcus noticed strange glowing blue marks appearing across Lyra's hands while she slept. At the same time, deep inside the cargo ship, an old hidden machine suddenly activated by itself. A red warning light began flashing across the control panel, and an unknown signal quietly escaped into deep space. Marcus woke up instantly when the red warning light started flashing across the cargo ship. Loud alarm sounds echoed through the narrow metal hallways while the old engine vibrated heavily beneath the floor. For one dangerous second, Marcus thought pirates had found them already. He quickly grabbed his plasma pistol and rushed toward the control room. Outside the front window, empty space looked calm and dark, but the ship's computer continued detecting an unknown signal spreading far beyond the nearby star systems. Marcus checked the system screen carefully. The signal was not coming from outside the ship. It was coming from inside. His eyes slowly moved toward the sleeping area where Lyra rested. A cold feeling passed through his chest. Marcus immediately shut down the communication systems and blocked every outgoing transmission. But the signal had already escaped into deep space for several minutes. Someone, somewhere, would eventually detect it. And in Marcus's experience, mysterious signals never brought good people. He quietly walked toward Lyra's room. The small door remained slightly open, and soft blue light leaked into the hallway. Inside the room, Lyra slept peacefully for the first time since leaving the market station. But glowing silver symbols covered both her arms like living energy moving beneath her skin. Marcus had seen strange military technology during the old galactic war, but nothing looked like this. The symbols almost seemed alive. As Lyra breathed slowly in her sleep, the glowing marks pulsed brighter with every heartbeat. Marcus carefully scanned the markings using an old military device hidden inside his toolbox. The scanner suddenly froze, then displayed ancient symbols Marcus recognized from history files long ago. His face slowly turned pale. The scanner identified Lyra's DNA as part of the Austravian royal bloodline. Marcus stared silently at the screen for several seconds because the Austravian Empire had supposedly disappeared decades earlier during one of the bloodiest wars in galactic history. Entire planets burned during that conflict. Millions died searching for ancient royal technology. Marcus sat alone in the dark control room while old memories returned to him. During the war, rumors spread among soldiers about the Austravian royals controlling powerful ancient weapons hidden across space. Some people believed those weapons could destroy entire star systems. Others believed they could protect civilizations from extinction. Nobody truly knew the truth because the royal family vanished before the war ended. Most people assumed every survivor had died long ago, but now one of them slept inside Marcus's broken cargo ship. Meanwhile, Lyra slowly opened her eyes inside the small room. She quietly walked toward the hallway after hearing Marcus speaking to himself in the control room. Hidden behind the doorway, she listened carefully while Marcus repeated the words, "Royal bloodline" and "dangerous signal." Fear slowly filled her face again. Her hand started shaking. In her mind, everything felt the same as before. Every person who learned about her bloodline eventually tried to use her, sell her, or lock her away. Marcus was probably no different. Without making noise, Lyra returned to her room and packed the small blanket and food she still secretly saved under the bed. Tears quietly rolled down her face while she prepared to leave. Part of her had almost started believing Marcus was kind. That mistake hurt the most. She slowly walked toward the emergency escape pods near the back of the ship. The old metal hallway lights flickered above her, while the ship moved through deep space. Lyra climbed inside one escape pod and tried activating it quietly before Marcus discovered her. But the escape pod door suddenly opened again. Marcus stood outside staring at her with confusion and frustration. "What are you doing?" he asked. Lyra immediately looked down at the floor and held her bag tightly against her chest. Her voice trembled while she spoke. "You found out what I am," she whispered. "Now you'll sell me too." The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. For a moment he could not even answer. The fear inside her eyes looked too real to be fake. Marcus slowly stepped inside the pod room and crouched beside her. He pulled the military scanner from his coat and looked at it silently. Then, without warning, he smashed the device against the metal wall as hard as possible. Sparks exploded across the floor. Lyra stared at him in complete shock. Marcus threw the broken scanner aside and spoke quietly. "I bought your freedom," he said, "not ownership." Lyra looked confused because nobody had ever spoken to her that way before. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Lyra slowly asked the question hiding deepest inside her heart. "Why did you help me?" Marcus looked away toward the dark stars outside the small escape pod window. He thought about the terrible things he had seen during the war. The dead civilians, the abandoned children, the soldiers he failed to save. Finally, Marcus answered honestly. "Because nobody helped people when I should have." Lyra did not fully understand his meaning. But for the first time she saw sadness inside Marcus instead of greed. Suddenly, loud warning alarms exploded across the cargo ship again. Marcus rushed toward the control room while Lyra followed behind nervously. The main radar screen displayed several fast-moving ships entering the outer edge of the system. Their engines burned bright red against the darkness of space. Marcus cursed quietly under his breath because he recognized the ship designs immediately. Bounty hunters. The signal had been detected, and they were coming directly for Lyra. The old cargo ship shook violently as Marcus pushed the engines beyond their safe limits. Red warning lights flashed across the control panels while metal pipes rattled inside the walls. Outside the front window, 3 bounty hunter ships raced closer through the darkness of space like hungry wolves chasing wounded prey. Marcus gripped the controls tightly while sweat rolled down his face. His damaged ship was never built for speed, but stopping meant death. Lyra stood silently beside the control room door, watching fear slowly grow inside the small ship. One enemy ship fired the first plasma blast. Bright blue energy exploded behind Marcus's cargo ship, shaking the entire vessel hard enough to throw Lyra against the wall. Marcus quickly pulled her back to her feet before steering sharply toward a dangerous asteroid field ahead. Massive black rocks floated through space, spinning slowly like giant monsters waiting in the darkness. Most pilots avoided this area because one mistake could destroy a ship instantly. But Marcus had no better choice left. The cargo ship flew between giant asteroids while alarms screamed continuously. Sparks burst from broken wires above Marcus's head as the old engines struggled to survive. Enemy ships followed closely behind, firing weapons that shattered nearby rocks into burning pieces. Lyra held onto the sidewall tightly while trying not to panic. Every explosion outside lit her frightened face with blue flashes of light. Marcus focused completely on flying, but deep inside he knew the ship could not survive much longer. Suddenly one large asteroid appeared directly ahead of them. Marcus tried turning away, but the damaged controls responded too slowly. The cargo ship raced straight toward the rock at terrifying speed. Lyra closed her eyes in fear. Then something impossible happened. The asteroid suddenly cracked apart before hitting the ship, almost like an invisible force pushed it away. Marcus stared forward in shock while the broken pieces drifted harmlessly past them. He slowly turned toward Lyra, whose glowing blue eyes now shined brighter than before. At the same moment, the bounty hunter ships behind them suddenly lost control. Their weapon systems shut down completely, and warning alarms exploded inside their cockpits. One ship crashed into an asteroid while the other 2 spun wildly through space. Marcus immediately understood the truth. Lyra's powers had activated without her even realizing it. The old stories about the Austravian royal bloodline were real. Her abilities could control technology itself. That terrifying realization filled Marcus with both hope and fear at the same time. Lyra looked down at her glowing hands with panic. "I didn't mean to do it," she whispered while stepping backward. Marcus carefully walked toward her and lowered his weapon belt onto the floor so she would not feel threatened. He calmly explained that none of this was her fault. But Lyra's breathing became faster. Everywhere she went, people feared her powers. Her own father sold her because of those abilities. Now even Marcus had seen what she truly was. Before Marcus could answer, the ship's engine suddenly failed completely. Thick smoke filled the control room while emergency systems activated across the vessel. The cargo ship drifted helplessly toward a nearby mining planet surrounded by old industrial satellites. Marcus quickly restarted backup systems and guided the damaged ship toward the planet's surface. The landing became rough and dangerous. Metal screamed beneath the ship as it crashed across the dusty ground outside an abandoned mining settlement. The mining colony looked poor and forgotten. Rusted buildings covered the rocky desert while smoke rose from broken factories in the distance. Refugees from different worlds lived there because nobody else wanted them. Children wearing torn clothes ran through the streets carrying stolen machine parts and empty food containers. Marcus kept his hood low while leading Lyra through the crowded settlement carefully. He knew bounty hunters would eventually search the area, so they needed repairs and fuel quickly before leaving again. Lyra stayed close behind Marcus while nervous people stared at her glowing silver skin. She expected insults or fear like always. But something unexpected happened instead. A small human boy approached her carefully and offered half of his piece of bread without saying a word. Lyra looked shocked because the boy himself looked hungry. Soon another child smiled at her and handed over an old blanket for warmth. The children had almost nothing, yet they still shared what little they owned. That simple kindness confused Lyra more than anything else. She quietly asked Marcus why they helped strangers when they were already suffering themselves. Marcus looked around the poor settlement silently before answering. "Because sometimes broken people understand pain better than rich people do." Lyra thought deeply about those words while watching families help each other survive inside the harsh mining colony. For the first time in years, warmth slowly began growing inside her chest instead of fear. Later that night, Marcus repaired the ship engine inside an old garage while Lyra sat nearby watching quietly. She slowly started asking small questions about human worlds, human food, and Marcus's old life before the war. Marcus rarely spoke about his past, but hearing Lyra laugh softly for the first time made the dark garage feel less lonely somehow. Neither of them noticed a dangerous pair of eyes secretly watching through a broken window outside. A hidden spy inside the colony had already recognized the glowing royal markings on Lyra's arms. Far away in deep space, the message finally reached one of the most feared men in the galaxy, General Kale. The cold military commander stared silently at Lyra's image on the hologram screen before speaking one terrifying order. "Prepare the fleet," he said quietly. "Bring the royal child to me alive." Dark storm clouds covered the mining planet while loud warning sirens echoed across the colony. Refugees rushed through the narrow streets carrying children, food boxes, and old weapons. Fear spread quickly after strange warships appeared in the sky above the settlement. Giant shadows passed over the metal rooftops while enemy engines shook the ground below. Marcus immediately recognized the military symbols painted on the ships. General Kale had arrived faster than expected, and this time he did not come quietly. Inside the repair garage, Marcus loaded energy cells into an old plasma rifle while Lyra watched nervously from the corner. Her glowing blue eyes moved toward the sky every time another explosion echoed outside. She quietly asked Marcus if Kale wanted to kill her. Marcus paused for a second before answering honestly. "No," he said. "People like Kale always want something worse." Lyra lowered her head silently because deep inside, she already knew he was right. Suddenly, armed soldiers landed across the colony streets using heavy dropships. Metal doors slammed open while black armored troops marched through the settlement searching every building one by one. People screamed and ran in panic as warning shots blasted through the air. Kale's soldiers treated the refugees like insects beneath their boots. Marcus quickly guided Lyra through the back exit of the garage while smoke filled the streets around them. But the colony had already become a battlefield. A terrified little boy suddenly cried for help nearby after getting trapped beneath fallen metal pipes during an explosion. His injured mother desperately tried lifting the heavy debris alone while enemy soldiers moved closer through the smoke. Marcus looked toward his ship hidden near the edge of the colony. Escape remained possible if they moved immediately. Lyra silently waited for his decision, expecting him to save himself first like everyone else always did. But Marcus turned away from the ship. Without hesitation, he ran toward the trapped family instead. Marcus lifted the burning metal pipes using all his strength while explosions shook the street around him. Enemy gunfire struck nearby walls, sending sparks across the air. Lyra watched in shock as Marcus carried the injured boy into safety before helping the mother escape as well. The refugees thanked him quickly before disappearing into the crowded streets. Marcus breathed heavily while blood slowly dripped from a fresh wound on his arm. "Why did you help them?" Lyra asked quietly. Marcus reloaded his rifle while answering without looking at her. "Because nobody else was going to." Those simple words stayed inside Lyra's mind while they continued moving through the destroyed colony. Everywhere she looked, Marcus protected strangers even while risking his own life. He shared medical supplies with injured refugees. He carried elderly survivors through dangerous streets. He even gave away most of his remaining ammunition to desperate civilians trying to defend their homes. Lyra had never seen someone fight for people without expecting power or money in return. Meanwhile, General Kyle watched the battle calmly from inside his massive command ship above the planet. Tall and cold-faced, Kyle wore dark military armor covered with silver medals from old wars. His eyes showed no emotion while entire buildings burned across the colony below. One officer warned him that civilian deaths were increasing rapidly. Kyle simply answered, "The child matters more than this planet." His soldiers immediately continued the attack without question. As night covered the mining colony, Marcus and Lyra hid briefly inside an abandoned factory filled with broken machines and rusted pipes. Lyra quietly cleaned the blood from Marcus's injured arm, while he repaired his rifle beside a weak lantern light. For several silent minutes, neither of them spoke. Then Lyra softly asked the question that had been inside her mind since meeting him. "Were you a soldier before?" Marcus stopped moving instantly. The old sadness returned to his face again. Finally, he answered quietly, "A long time ago." Lyra slowly realized Marcus understood war too well for an ordinary cargo pilot. The way he moved during battle, the way he watched danger, the pain hidden behind his eyes, none of it belonged to a simple trader. Marcus eventually admitted he once commanded soldiers during the old galactic war years earlier. Entire cities burned under his orders. Thousands died because of decisions he made. After the war ended, Marcus abandoned military life and disappeared into deep space carrying guilt he could never escape. Before Lyra could respond, loud footsteps suddenly echoed outside the factory. Kyle's soldiers had found them. Marcus immediately pushed Lyra behind a metal machine as enemy troops stormed inside firing plasma weapons. Bright blue blasts exploded across the dark factory while Marcus returned fire from behind cover. The battle became violent and chaotic. Sparks flew through the air while smoke filled the building. Marcus fought like someone trying to protect the last good thing left in his life. One by one, enemy soldiers fell back under his attacks, but then a hidden sniper shot pierced through Marcus's side. Lyra screamed as Marcus collapsed onto the floor. Enemy soldiers quickly surrounded them from every direction while Marcus struggled to stand again through the pain. Blood spread across his clothes as he raised his rifle one final time to protect Lyra. But his body could barely move anymore. Kale's commander slowly stepped forward through the smoke and smiled coldly at the terrified child. At that moment, something inside Lyra finally broke. Her glowing blue eyes suddenly turned bright white. Ancient energy exploded outward from her body like a storm. Every machine inside the factory instantly shut down. Enemy weapons shattered apart in soldiers' hands. Massive shockwaves blasted armored troops across the walls like toys. The entire building shook violently while blue energy symbols filled the air around Lyra like living fire. Outside the colony, thousands of people looked toward the glowing factory in fear and shock. And high above the planet, General Kale slowly smiled while watching the power awaken at last. "The royal heir is alive," he whispered quietly. The destroyed factory burned silently beneath the dark night sky while smoke drifted through the ruined mining colony. Broken machines and unconscious soldiers covered the floor around Lyra. Blue energy still flickered weakly across her glowing hands as fear filled her face. She had never released that much power before. Even Marcus looked shocked while struggling to breathe against the cold metal wall behind him. Blood continued spreading across his side wound, but his eyes stayed focused only on Lyra. Lyra slowly stepped backward while staring at the destruction around her. "I hurt them," she whispered with shaking hands. Marcus forced himself to stand despite the pain and carefully walked toward her. He knew fear was more dangerous than power itself. If Lyra lost control emotionally, entire cities could eventually suffer. Marcus gently placed his injured hand on her shoulder and told her to breathe slowly. "You protected us," he said quietly. "That's different from hurting people." Outside the factory, frightened refugees gathered near the streets while whispers spread rapidly through the colony. Everyone had seen the explosion of ancient blue light rising into the sky. Some people looked at Lyra with awe. Others looked terrified. Old legends about the lost Austravian bloodline were known across many worlds, and now those legends suddenly felt real again. Marcus understood the colony would no longer remain safe for them after tonight. News of Lyra's existence would spread everywhere soon. A few hours later, Marcus secretly prepared the cargo ship for departure while most refugees slept underground hiding from Kale's remaining forces. The old engines barely functioned after the battle, but staying longer meant certain death. Lyra quietly helped carry supplies into the ship without speaking much. Guilt still filled her eyes after what happened inside the factory. Every time she looked at her glowing hands, fear returned to her face again. Before leaving the colony, the small human boy Marcus rescued earlier approached Lyra and handed her a tiny metal star made from broken machine parts. "So you remember good people exist," the boy said shyly before running back toward his family. Lyra stared silently at the little star resting in her palm. Nobody had ever given her a gift before without expecting something in return. Slowly, she closed her fingers around it while a small emotional smile appeared on her face. After escaping the mining planet, Marcus guided the cargo ship toward an abandoned station hidden near a dead moon far outside normal travel routes. The station looked ancient and forgotten, covered with rust and frozen ice. Few people even remembered it existed anymore. Marcus believed it was the safest place to repair the ship and hide temporarily from Kale's fleet. But deep inside, he knew Kale would never stop hunting them now. Inside the silent station, Lyra finally began speaking more openly than before. While Marcus repaired damaged systems nearby, she quietly told him stories about her childhood before the war destroyed everything. Her father had once been kind and protective when she was very young. He used to carry her on his shoulders through beautiful Austravian cities filled with glowing towers and floating gardens. Back then, Lyra believed her family would stay together forever. But everything changed after the Empire collapsed during the war. Enemy armies hunted the surviving royal families across the galaxy. Lyra and her father spent years hiding from bounty hunters, criminals, and military groups searching for royal blood. Slowly, fear changed him. Hunger changed him. Desperation changed him. He started lying, stealing, and trusting dangerous people just to survive another day. Over time, survival became more important to him than love itself. One night, while hiding on a poor outer colony, her father sold her to alien traffickers in exchange for fuel and safe passage off-world. Lyra lowered her head while telling the story. "He cried after signing the deal," she whispered softly, "but he still left." Tears slowly rolled down her silver cheeks, but she quickly wiped them away like she hated showing weakness. Marcus remained silent for several seconds because the story felt painfully familiar to him. War destroyed people long before it killed them physically. Marcus finally admitted something he had hidden for years. During the Old War, his military unit became trapped during a massive planetary attack. Marcus received orders to retreat immediately before enemy fleets arrived. But leaving meant abandoning injured soldiers behind. Marcus followed the orders anyway. Thousands died waiting for help that never returned. Since that day, guilt followed him everywhere across the galaxy. He stopped believing he deserved peace a long time ago. For the first time, Lyra realized Marcus carried broken pieces inside himself too. But before either of them could speak further, warning alarms suddenly activated throughout the abandoned station. Marcus rushed toward the control room and froze. Dozens of enemy ships surrounded the station from every direction. General Kale had found them again. A cold hologram message suddenly appeared above the control panel. Kale's emotionless face stared directly at Marcus through the screen. "You cannot protect her forever," Kale said calmly. "The child belongs to history now." Explosions immediately shook the station as enemy soldiers breached the outer levels. Marcus grabbed his rifle and ordered Lyra to stay behind him while they escaped through the emergency tunnels. Smoke filled the corridors while alarms screamed around them. They fought through several enemy troops while racing toward the docking bay where the cargo ship waited. But Kyle had planned everything carefully. As Marcus battled soldiers near the docking entrance, hidden stun weapons suddenly fired from above. Powerful electric blasts struck Marcus directly in the chest, throwing him violently against the wall. His rifle crashed onto the floor while darkness covered his vision. Lyra screamed and tried running toward him, but armored soldiers grabbed her arms tightly before she could escape. Blue energy flickered across her skin, but fear and exhaustion weakened her control. General Kale himself slowly walked through the smoke and stood before the terrified girl. "You were born for something greater than hiding," Kale said quietly. The last thing Marcus saw before losing consciousness completely was Lyra reaching toward him, while enemy soldiers dragged her away into the darkness.